Good morning, guys. I know it's been a while. I hoped to see you today. Sadly, it's not possible, but it doesn't matter. I still care about you. I still miss you very, very much. And we are going to talk about our very last know-how 10, dating urban buildings. It's a very short one. It's a very easy one, quite funny, actually, because we have a lot of images. I will make a Kahoot about this, and we will make the exercises as well. So it's connected to the previous lesson, Knowledge 13, about how the cities evolved over time. And we are going to talk about some elements that we talked about in that lesson. Dating urban buildings. It's a know-how that is a bit similar to the one we had at the beginning of the year in January about dating rural buildings. So I'll remind you the difference between rural and urban. Rural, it's everything about the countryside. It's about the nature. It's about the villages. Urban is everything about the cities and the towns. It's everything about the things you can find in big cities or in small cities that we call towns. All right? So, first page. What are urban buildings? An urban building, so I'm using the other color, is a building that you find in a town or a city. I remind you the difference between town and cities. A town is more than 10,000 inhabitants, but less than 100,000. So a town is bigger than a village, but it's smaller than a city. And a city is an urban area with at least 100,000 inhabitants. A city is Liège, it's Brussels, course, but it's Verviers, a city is Mons, and you have even bigger towns like, I don't know, Floref, etc., etc. But a town is smaller. For example, if you take a town like Beaufailly, like Esneux, it's not a city, but it's not a village, okay? So, urban buildings. You have different types of urban buildings. Some are residential. Residential, it means that you live there. Okay, so you have houses or apartment buildings. This is where people live, where they sleep, where they are eating, where they have their homes. Okay, the difference between a house and a home. A house is the building. Okay, a house is the walls, the rooftop, etc., etc. A home is somewhere you feel like you have your shelter. Okay, so you can have a home in a castle. If you live in a castle, your home can be a van. If you are living in a moving van, okay, your home can be a house, but your house is just a building, okay? So we have residential buildings where people live, and other buildings are not residential. You have schools, shops, offices, train stations. These buildings are close together because many people live and work in cities. When you are looking around in a city, if you are moving in Liège, for example, if you are walking in the streets of Liège, you can see that all the homes, all the houses, all the buildings are close together, all right? We can sort residential urban buildings into 3 groups. So, according to you, what are the 3 categories? So, what are the 3 types of buildings in which you can live for your residency, for residential purposes? So, if you live in a city, in what kind of buildings can you live? So I'll give you a few seconds to think about it and we are going to complete it. So if you are living in a city, let's say in Liège, you can live in a house. Okay, so houses, house. This is the first type of buildings you can live in. You can live in a house. Or you can live in an apartment building. Be careful, apartment, you have one P and no E after the T. Apartment building. You can live in a small apartment or a big apartment. An apartment, you have to share the building with other people. You have people that are living in apartments above you or beneath you. And the last type is a tower or block tower or apartment tower. This is a big building, okay, a tall building in which you have many apartments. Okay, you can have sometimes up to 12, 14, 16 floors with different apartments, or you can have even more. All right, so you have apartment buildings and block towers. We are going to talk about the difference, how you can make a quick decision if the building is an apartment building or an apartment tower. Let's talk about the first one. And I take the color pink for house. So a house is a small home for one family. When you are in a house, you don't share your house with other people that you don't know, okay? In a house, it's usually what we say a one family residency. And so it's usually 2 or 3 floors and sometimes you can have a garden. It all depends if you are in the city center, you don't always have a garden. So it might have a garden. It means maybe there is a garden, but not always. And it's usually 2 or 3 floors. You can see here, this is a typical house that you can find in most cities. You have here the ground floor. Oh, sorry. So this is a house, okay? You have like the ground floor. Usually you have the living room, the kitchen on the ground floor. Then you have another floor. Sometimes you have a few bedrooms and then another floor on top of it. This is another example where you have the ground floor and then just one floor above it. So 2 floors or 3 floors, okay? But you can see that the houses are close together. They are next to each other, okay? And you can have a house with 3 floors next to a house with 2 floors, etc., etc. So this is a house. Now we have apartment buildings. Here we are. An apartment building is slightly bigger. You have 3 or 4 floors and you have several apartments. So within the building, you share the building with other families, with other people that are not connected to you, that are not members of your family. They are other people. You can have 3 or 4 floors, and this is something that you can see, like, for example, let's take this building, for example. You can see that you have different balconies. The balcony is an area where you can go outside. It's not, you don't have a rooftop, a balcony. You can go outside. And this is one apartment with a balcony. You have here probably the living room and then bedrooms. And underneath it, you have another apartment, which is on the ground floor. You have a terrace. you have a balcony, etc., etc. And so you have many people that are living there. Here on this building, it's a bit different. You have different garages. Probably these garages belong to, let's say, this apartment, the first one. And these garages maybe belong to the other one, this one. And there is just one door, one entry door, and people go either to the first floor or the second floor. And you can have two apartments, one above the other and one beneath the other. So these are apartment buildings. So apartment buildings between 3 and 4 floors. So more floors than a house, but less floors than a high-rise building or an apartment tower. This is the third element. High-rise. High, it means high. It's the opposite of low. High-rise building or apartment tower, une tour d'appartement. They are tall buildings and you have many floors and many apartments. You have them in big cities. Okay, if you go to Liège, you can see many of them. Okay, not so much in towns, but in big cities you can have them. And so you can see this is one of the biggest apartment towers in Liège. This is a quite classical one. You have on each floor, you have a different apartment. You can see that each apartment has a terrace. In here, they don't have a terrace or a balcony. Each apartment has many windows, etc., etc. So, when you live in a city, you can live in a house, just your family, in an apartment building that you share with maybe 1 or 2 other families, or in a high-rise building or apartment tower that you can share with many different people. Let's talk about how it evolved. So it's like, here we are using pink. When we talked about how to date rural buildings, it's the same here about urban buildings. We don't have traces of buildings in cities that date back to prehistory or antiquity. Nothing that you can find as buildings that are still up. What you can find is ruins. You can find ruins on archaeological sites. If you go to the Archaeoforum in Place Saint-Lambert in Liège, you can see traces of buildings that used to exist back in prehistory and antiquity, but we don't have any house nor buildings that date back to antiquity. The first buildings that we have that are still from the time period of the Middle Ages actually usually date back to the end of the Middle Ages. So Middle Ages is the first time period in which we can find buildings. In the past, building in cities were first made of mud and wood. Mud, c'est de la boue. Wood, c'est du bois. Okay? And so we used wood as the structure and we used mud to cover the structure of the woods and to make the walls, right? Later, we used stone and bricks or brick. Okay, stone, c'est de la pierre. Brick, ce sont des briques. These buildings, they were usually homes and shops at the same time. So what you usually had at the bottom of it, you had the shop. Okay, this is a building that you can find close to Les Quais de la Batte. This is a cafe today. It used to be a tavern. It used to be an inn. Avant, c'était une auberge, une taverne. And on top of it, you had some rooms where people could just sleep for the night. And the owners, the people that were working in the tavern, used to sleep even below the roof on top of the buildings. you can see here that you still have traces of the wood structure. Okay, you can see the wood structure just like this. En français, cette structure en bois qui est encore apparente sur la façade, c'est un terme bien spécifique. On appelle ça des colombages. D'accord? Donc ça n'a rien à voir avec les colombes, l'oiseau. On appelle ça des colombages, ces structures en bois qui sont encore visibles sur les façades. And if you see that in a house or in a building, it means that it's a very old house. You can see here that between the wooden planks, you have bricks. Okay, you have stones here. And here it was renovated. It was heavily renovated, but you still have bricks on this side of the building. And so there used to be shops and houses. If you go to the Rue Pierreuse in Liège, you can still have these shops at the bottom. So here you have a bookshop over here. You have a cafe over here. Here, I think it was transformed into a house. I'm not sure. But you have some artisans that still have their shops at the bottom. And on the second and third and sometimes even fourth floor, you have housing. So these are buildings that date back to the Middle Ages. They are renovated. Okay, they were renovated. Now they have isolation, they have electricity, they have all the important amenities that we have in all modern buildings. But their facade is still bearing the traces of the medieval times with the wood and stone and bricks. If you remember, I said that in the Middle Ages, in the cities, most buildings were made out of wood. And when there were fires, it was a real problem. Because if you had a fire, all of this wooden structure could caught fire, and they could burn down. And so this is something that we stopped using in the modern times. We changed the way we built the buildings in the cities in the modern times. We have a few houses, a few buildings that are still visible today that date back to the modern times. In the modern times, you had two options. You had buildings that could be fancy, meaning fancy, a bit, extravagant, fancy, or they could be very simple. And so you had two choices, fancy or simple. They could be decorated or plain. Plain, it means that there is no decoration, very simple. You don't have a particular element on the facade. And it was all about the style. There were two styles. The first one is the Baroque style. The Baroque style, le style baroque, is very decorated and sometimes even too much. Okay, you have here pictures of the Baroque style. You can find these buildings in Brussels, in Ghent, in Antwerp. We don't have them in Liège, not so much. We have a few of them, but not so much. You find them more in the cities on the northern part of Belgium, in the Flemish part of Belgium. Because if you remember, in the modern times, we had important Flemish cities that got very rich. Remember, we had Ghent, Antwerp. They used to have fairs, and with the great explorations, they had a lot of money. And so you can see that this Baroque style is very, very, very decorated. You often have like statues on top of them. You can see you have statues of people. You even have domes. You can see a dome. You can have like these elements that look really Italian, Rococo, Baroque, etc. You have big windows. And in these windows, you often had colored glass and stained glass. Vous aviez parfois des vitraux. Les vitraux, c'est du verre coloré avec des images qui sont peintes un peu comme dans les églises. You had elements like here, you had sculptures, you even had some golden paint. Vous avez même des dorures, etc., etc. So this is the Baroque style. The Baroque style is something very decorated and with a lot of fancy elements. Then there is another style, completely different. It's the classical style, le style classique ou néoclassique, comme on en parle parfois en architecture. The classical style, it looked back to ancient times. It tried to reproduce what could be seen in antiquity. So when you think about antiquity, you can think about the temples, okay, about the Pantheon, about the big temples of antiquity. And they were usually in big buildings like this one. So this is a classical building that date back to the modern times. Oops, I need to connect my battery. And so you can see that they are very simple. They are usually big rectangles. You have just a simple color, 2 types of windows, very rectangular ones, and then you don't have fancy decorations. It's very simple. You have lines, a few balconies, and that's it. So back to the modern times, you have 2 styles, the Baroque that you can't miss and the classical style. Now let's talk about the contemporary period. As you know, something very important happened. It's the Industrial Revolution. I'm just connecting my computer. Here we are. Drinking a bit of coffee. And so, Industrial Revolution. We have different types of homes that start to emerge. We have workers' homes, les maisons ouvrières, comme on dit en français. They were usually close to factories. So, Industrial Revolution, it's the time of factories. The factory owners, they want to have their workers to live close to the factories so they can come early to work. They don't have to commute to work. They can just go, they used to go there on foot, or they would take their bikes and they would go to the factory. And so sometimes even the factories started to build houses for their workers. And they were building very easy houses. They are usually narrow. Narrow, ça veut dire étroit. Alors un petit moyen mnémotechnique. Narrow, le N, c'est étroit comme lettre. D'accord? Vous avez ici les 2 barres du N qui représentent la maison. Et donc narrow, ça veut dire étroit. Les maisons étaient collées les unes aux autres. Narrow, c'est l'opposé de wide. Ah, évidemment, je ne peux pas écrire dessus. Hop. De wide. Wide, ça veut dire large. Wide. Et le W de wide, c'est très large un W. D'accord? W, wide, ça veut dire large. Le N de narrow, c'est très étroit le N. D'accord? Donc narrow, étroit, wide, large. The workers' homes, they were narrow and they were made out of bricks because this is the time of bricks, you know? Factories used to make bricks, and so we had the workers' homes made out of bricks. They were usually 5 meters wide. Alors, quand on dit 5 meters wide, ça veut dire large de 5 mètres. Ça ne veut pas dire qu'elles étaient très larges. 5 mètres, c'est pas si large que ça. They were not decorated. Sometimes the houses didn't belong to the workers. The houses sometimes belonged to the factories. And so the workers, they could just live there when they had a contract. It was not their homes. It was not their property. And so they were not decorating their houses. Over time, the workers could buy the house, and they used to have them in their own names as their property, and they started to decorate them just a little, but not that much. And so you can see that they are close to each other. They are all identical. They all look the same. They have the same door. Then you have a window and then just another floor. They are small houses. They were usually just for one family. And they are just all close together. Okay? They were made out of bricks. Workers' homes. And then we had middle class homes. So middle class, c'est la classe moyenne. It's the people that are not workers, so they are not working in factories, but they are not particularly rich. Okay, so middle class, la classe moyenne, they are the people that are not workers, but they don't belong to the category of workers, but they don't belong to the category of owners or of people with a lot of money. And so middle class homes, they were usually outside the city center, or they were in renovated areas. They were bigger, more beautiful, and they had some decorations, but they're not expensive. Okay, so they were a bit different from each other. They were usually slightly bigger. Sometimes they had a small garden and they had some decorations, but not decorations like the one you see in the Baroque style. Okay, so maybe the decorations were a fence, une clôture, or a door that was a bit different, but it's not something completely fancy. Okay, so middle class homes. And the last element that we are going to talk about are garden cities. It's a concept that was introduced by the urban planner Ebenezer Howard. You don't have to know that name. And it was planned communities with green spaces, housing and services outside the main cities. So the garden cities, the point was, workers had no option but to live close to the factory where they were working. Okay, they were close to the factory. If you remember, in the Industrial Revolution, everything was about coal. Tout était à propos du charbon pendant la révolution industrielle. And so the cities, they were very polluted. You had a lot of pollution in the air, and it was sometimes very hard to live close to the factories or to live inside the city center because it was very polluted and it was very crowded. You had a lot of people. Some people wanted to live outside the cities, and there was an option that was offered to them. It was to live inside a garden city. C'est un quartier résidentiel qu'on appelait garden cities en anglais. On n'a pas d'équivalent en français. D'accord, on appelait ça plutôt les lotissements résidentiels à l'extérieur de la ville. And the idea was to go outside the city, so the air was less polluted, but they needed the same services as the ones you could have when you were living in the city. So these areas started to have railways, so the families could live further from the city, but with the railway, with the train or the tram, they could go to the city to work. They also had green areas. So you had parks, you had squares, green squares, and most houses had a garden. And so people could escape the city. Today, many garden cities have become part of the city as the city has grown over time. So these garden cities that were outside the city, now the city has evolved a lot, and these areas, you can find them now inside the city. They are in the suburbs, okay? They are not into the historic center. They are not inside the city center. They are usually on the outskirts of the city. But they used to be very far from the city when it was the Industrial Revolution, and now they are part of the city as well. And so these are the examples that you can see. These are houses from the garden cities. So you can see that you still have houses close together. Okay, they are row houses. You have a small garden in front of the house, and sometimes you even had a garden behind the house. The houses used to look the same. Okay, they were very similar. And you can see here that you had all of these houses in these areas. Okay, you can see them here. And they are part of the city. It's green. You can see many trees. You can see green areas. Okay, so garden cities tried to include greenery to their initial plan. Since 1950, what happened? Since 1950, if you remember, houses start to have a garage because most people had a car. And we also renovate a lot of them. So old factories, old homes are transformed and renovated, or sometimes they are even replaced. There are some houses that date back to the early 20th century that are very old. Sometimes we put them down, we destroy them, and we build something new where they used to be. And so you have examples. This is typically a house from the 1960s. You have a garage like this. Here, this is a factory that is renovated and transformed into apartments. You have garages. So that's the very same as the houses that were built in the rural areas. You can see from 1950 in rural areas and in urban areas, you now have a garage because people have cars. Practice. Now, let's put all the things that we have learned into practice. I'm going to explain to you. This is going to be a homework. I'm going to precise it. This is a homework that will be done. I hope that we are going to see each other this week, that we are going to correct it in the classroom. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. I don't know. It's not about me. It's not up to me. So you have features, you have elements. For example, you have a building made of mud or wood, later stone and brick. You need to say if these buildings that are made of mud, wood, and then stone and brick, do they belong to the Middle Ages, the modern times, the industrial city, or since 1950? Industrial city and since 1950, this is the contemporary period, but you need to separate it, okay? Contemporary period from the Industrial Revolution in the industrial city, when you have workers' homes, middle classes, houses, and garden cities, or since 1950. And you just need to write it down. Same, fancy decorations like Baroque style. Is it Middle Ages, modern times, industrial city, or since 1950s, etc., etc.? You have 5 items. You need to tell me the time period that corresponds to the item. Then it's just about garden city. So, is it a garden city? You need to answer yes, if it's a garden city, or no. So, is a home with a small garden near a railway, is it a garden city? Yes or no? You just answer here, yes or no. Is a tall tower in the city center with no trees, is it a garden city? Yes or no? You complete this, okay? You have different sentences and you just say yes or no. Who lived there? Meaning what type of family, what type of people lived in these elements, in these configurations. So, who lived in a small brick house next to a factory? Is it a worker? Worker, c'est un ouvrier. Okay, workers' homes, des maisons ouvrières. A worker and his or her family. Is it a middle class family, a rich family, a family with a car? And you answer here. Same, who lived in a big house with decorations and balconies? Is it a worker? Is it a middle class family, a rich family, or a family with a car? For each element, you complete it with the type of people that lived, that could live in that type of house. And then what is the material? Meaning, is it made of wood, brick, stone, glass, mud, or metal? In the Middle Ages, houses were made of and You have to complete with an element from this list. Old castles were made with strong The castles, what were they made of? Were they made of mud, wood, metal, etc.? You do this for the 6 elements you complete with the material. It's quite fast, okay? It's an easy exercise. You have 4 exercises, and this is a homework. This is a homework for Wednesday, okay? Wednesday, 9 a.m., you must do it. And I'm going to find a way for you to show me that you did it. I will ask you to send me a picture or a print screen of your 2 pages of exercises. So page 7 and page 8, you need to send me a picture of you that you made it. Okay, I'm going to precise it on the group of It's Learning. Okay, that's for Wednesday, 9 a.m. Okay, it's not 9:30. It's Wednesday, 9 a.m., not 9:30, not Thursday, not next week. Okay, this is a deadline. You can take your diary and you write for Wednesday, 9 a.m. Your homework must be done. It's either I'm going to see it in the classroom if we can go back to school, or, well, online if I can't go back to school. Okay, so that's important for Wednesday, 9 a.m. That's it for this video for today. I'm going to remind you about the different instructions online, and I wish you well and have a good day. Bye bye, guys.